How is it that some of the most critically acclaimed movies and TV shows of all time seem to also have the worst and most unsatisfying endings? Well, let's talk about it. Hey guys, what's up? It's Imurgency and welcome back to my channel. Today we are here and we're talking about cinema. Now this video is inspired by a lot of the discourse that was going on online a couple of weeks ago with the release of the movie Challengers. Namely because the movie had been gassed up to be this amazing project, everyone seemed to love it, it got a lot of critical acclaim, but a common theme that a lot of people felt about the movie's ending was that it was either unsatisfying, unclear, or just a bad ending for the buildup of the movie. And as someone who's seen the film twice, I can attest that on my first watch, I can understand where that sentiment comes from. It really got me thinking and going down this rabbit hole over what do we mean when we say that a movie or a TV show has a good ending, and what about a certain ending makes it satisfying. I feel like this is gonna be an interesting video and conversation because we're gonna delve into things like what I like to call the art of giving us nothing, how this all plays in the media literacy, and whether or not media needs to give us a structured ending or a satisfying ending. So if you like content like this and are new around here, then definitely subscribe to join the roommates. Also leave a like on this video because it helps out a ton with the YouTube algorithm. Also follow me on my socials here at Imurgency on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter. And consider clicking the join button to become a channel member today to get 2 exclusive channel member videos a month, as well as early access to every single one of these videos. But let's get into this video, shall we? Now, the past couple of videos, I've been trying to cosplay, I've been trying to dress up and be in theme for whatever I'm talking about. Today, I don't know if you could tell, since we're talking about like film and movies, this might be actually uncouth of me, I don't know. But I tried to give like stereotypical film nerd, like the beanie, like the casual, but also maybe kind of like intellectual vibe. I'm giving that one guy from BoJack Horseman. I'm forgetting his name, but he has a similar color beanie, and you get it. You get it. I don't know. This is just not my normal vibe, and I'm kind of shocked looking at the viewfinder and seeing this. But this is all besides the point. Let's talk about endings. So I guess the first thing to unpack is, what is a satisfying ending? What do we mean when we say that a movie or TV show's ending was satisfying? According to an article, a satisfying story ending should be able to bring a solid close to your protagonist's development, meaning that they have learned valuable lessons during the story and the ending should clearly show their transformation. Basically, that things should come to a natural close, characters should learn stuff, and there should be a relatively clear character arc that comes to a relatively clear conclusion. Speaking from the heart, I feel like a satisfying ending is just when things tie up nicely. Like you have the characters that you initially start out with, go through their different character arcs, learn, grow, find a love interest. And at the very end, there's this feeling of resolution, this feeling that like, yes, they have done what this movie or TV show has set out to have them do. They've grown in a certain way, they've made connections in a certain way, whether that be through friends or love interests, and they've solved the problem that they've been tasked with. Whether that be saving the world, saving their marriage, or just learning about the true meaning of friendship. Just having a story that has a set beginning and an end. Now that sounds all fine and dandy and all, but it also does sound a little predictable. Which brings me to my next question of, if it is so predictable and it is the case of what we expect for all of these stories, why do we have this urge to want one and to look for a satisfying ending? Well, to start off with another quote, it inspires the viewer to reminisce fondly over the things that they loved and to ponder what may lie next. Life is so full of unanswered questions and imperfections that the relative safety of a satisfying ending can provide a comfort not always afforded by other aspects of existence. Now, I feel like that's a bit of a dramatic take, real, but a little dramatic, but I think it speaks to the need for something satisfying. Something that we can see, compartmentalize, and then move on or learn from. Satisfying ending at the end of the day makes us feel good, makes us feel like we've completed the watch. We've completed our time in this world, in this story, and can then move on with our lives, leaving that source of media in the past, to be thought of later or not. And I feel like, as the quote mentions, that's a form of comfort, that's a form of safety. I feel like that's the reason why people love rewatching TV shows or like sitcoms so much, because it gives that comfort and that safety of knowing like this is when it starts and this is when it ends, and having that routine, knowing what to expect and feeling satisfied when the expected comes to fruition. But with that said, what happens when we don't get that satisfying ending, when things don't come to a nice close? And this is where we get into the part that I like to call the art of giving us nothing. With the name coined from the iconic comment left on one of the videos of Dua Lipa, aka Dula Peep, in which a video of her dancing inspired a commenter to comment, "Go girl, give us nothing." Now, Go Girl, Give Us Nothing and the art of giving us nothing aren't really similar all that much outside of the name. But y'all know I love a good bit of unserious pop culture history. I have a whole video ranking a bunch of pop moments if you want to go check that out. Shameless plug. But let's get into the art of giving us nothing. I feel like when the makers of movies and TV shows decide that they aren't going to give a very cut and dry, satisfying unsatisfying ending, they have to be very intentional and careful with how it's done. Because there are a lot of movies and a lot of TV shows that try and give like that open-ended ending that in some cases are actually profound and in other cases are faking deepness. And there's a real gradient between the two when it is done right and when it is not. And that in-between space is what we call the art of giving us nothing. Like, this is the ability to give us a ending that is so obscure and thought-provoking that it causes the viewer to then think about the movie after they've finished watching it, to draw their own conclusion, to put on their own metaphorical thinking caps, to either give meaning or find the meaning behind the context of that said media. In a way that it's intentional and shows that the makers of the film or the makers of the TV show wanted you to come to that sort of conclusion and not just left it open for the viewer to come to any conclusion, if that makes sense. Like, the art of it all is to leave it open with a purpose as opposed to just leaving it open because you couldn't think of an ending, you know? Like, I feel like the latter is giving very much like, and then they woke up energy. Like this sense of fake deepness without any real substance. And it's just really unfortunate that when it comes to a lot of the movies that do this well, they're tagged as being terrible or having bad endings. Because in some cases, the open-ended or not clearly defined ending can make a movie or TV show even better and more culturally relevant than one that just has a flat-out ending. And I have some examples. Say using Challengers as a case study for this, right? A movie that on paper has a great story, characters, cinematography, etc., but ultimately upsets and confuses a lot of fans because of its unsatisfying ending or unclear ending. And now the story, take a quick little tangent to actually talk about the movie, because I feel like this was a really great movie and I haven't yet given my thoughts on what I thought about it. Challengers as a movie is simply fascinating. Like, it has an amazing story in my opinion, where it felt like everybody was acting down. And it just really shocked me because, like I said, I've seen the movie twice and I didn't even think I was going to see it once because I saw a sports movie and I tuned out because I typically am not into sports movies. But you know what I am into? Zendaya. I love her down. And anything she's in, I'm going to watch. So I went in with the expectations that I wasn't going to be a big fan of the movie, I'd just be there for Zendaya, and I was left gagged. Like I said, I came to support Zendaya and to see Zendaya, but left the movie theater a fan of all three leads, and of the story, and possibly even tennis. Like, I might just pick up a racket. If you haven't seen the movie and want a quick synopsis of it, and if you don't want spoilers, then go to this timestamp right here. But the movie revolves around three characters: Tashi, who's Zendaya's character, Art, and Patrick. And the movie revolves around this pseudo-love triangle where all three of them are involved in tennis and play tennis. Patrick and Art are childhood friends and eventually come across Tashi Duncan at a tennis match or tennis tournament. Both end up being enamored by her, although it's important to note that Patrick was interested in Tashi first. They meet up, have a spicy scene together that's gone viral online, and eventually come to the deal of whichever of the two boys wins the next tennis match gets a chance to date Tashi. And Patrick ends up being the one that wins. But a couple of years later, because Art is a sneaky and conniving friend that really wants Tashi, I guess, he does everything in his power to break up Tashi and Patrick by planting seeds in their ears, and eventually ends up swooping up Tashi after she has a career-ending injury. And they eventually get married, have kids, and work together for the rest of their lives up until the main event of this movie, which is a tennis challenger where Art and Patrick have to face off against each other for their own sets of stakes. Now, that's a very brief and quick synopsis of the movie. You should definitely go check it out yourself. But the way that people have tended to summarize this movie, having the story be about Patrick being in love with Art, Art being in love with Tashi, and Tashi being in love with tennis. Which brings us to the unsatisfying ending of this movie, where there are previously established stakes for winning or losing this competition. For Art, Tashi has threatened to leave him if he doesn't win this challenger, and if he doesn't continue to have his tennis career. Patrick being asked by Tashi to lose to Art in exchange for coaching and hookups, and Patrick eventually tells Art through tennis and through like lore that you get from watching the movie that he and Tashi have been seeing each other behind Art's back. And at the very end, they're at this scene where they're at match point, and right as the match is about to end, I forget which one of them, but one of them misses the ball, and it cuts them hugging each other and Tashi screaming out of joy and excitement, which then ends the movie. Giving no explicit ending to any of their characters. On the surface level, we don't know the fallout of Patrick telling Art that Tashi's cheated. We don't know the results of the match, who ended up winning the match. And we don't exactly know, spelled out, why Tashi screamed at the end and why the two boys were hugging. The ending is essentially left very open in terms of the end result and the three's relationship with each other. And this is what frustrated a lot of people. Like, the stakes were really built up for most of this movie, only for it to end semi-obscurely and not getting that satisfying ending and have it spelled out like, this is how these characters played out, this is how the match played out. And this is an example of a movie that uses the art of giving us nothing, because they quite literally gave us nothing to really close out the story outside of what you can use with your own interpretation. In my opinion, how I saw the ending was the reunion of these two essentially brothers that have been separated by so much time and drama, and how a game of tennis had been able to reunite them in a way that initially united them. They'd been honest with each other on the court, and as Tashi had said in the beginning of the movie, playing tennis and being in a tennis match is like a relationship, and you share and exchange that energy and love with your opponent, and that's exactly what happened. And then on Tashi's part, I think that Tashi screamed because she saw that tennis, she saw that energy, and that essentially electrified her, because we hadn't seen her scream in that movie since the first time that she was introduced when she was on the field playing. So as someone that had been taken out of the game and taken out of the playing part of the industry, that was the first time that she felt something in the same way that she did back when she played, which can speak for many other things. But again, those are just my theories and interpretations, and there could be many of different theories and interpretations, and that's sort of the beauty of the art of giving us nothing. You can have so many different endings, so many different possibilities, and so many different interpretations that can all be true, which makes it so it doesn't really matter what the ending is truly, because you can come up with your own theories, you can come up with your own analyses of these characters and of the story, and them all be right because they were written in a way that was intentional, and take that away with you and think about it even after the movie has ended. And that's the importance of undefined story endings. Like I said before in the video, when you have a satisfying and complete story, you think of it as, yeah, that was a good story, but then you kind of leave the movie there. Of course, bringing it up whenever you want to talk about your favorite movie or like a satisfying movie ending, but it doesn't really stick with you the same way a obscure or unsatisfying ending will, because you're going to want to constantly wonder about what the actual ending and what the meaning of the movie was, which allows you to, if you decide to look that deep, really find some deeper interpretations of the film, and then also kind of yourself and why you're making those interpretations. Another example of a movie that came out semi-recently that had a unsatisfying ending that people hated was the movie Nope by Jordan Peele. People were pissed at Nope and didn't really like the movie because it seemed like the ending didn't give us much of anything and felt like it wasted the viewer's time by quite literally giving us nothing. No explanations, no satisfying ending outside of ending jean jacket, and brought up so many questions that were left unanswered. Now, I've previously made a review on Nope if you want to go check that out, but like I said, this is another example of an open-ended ending where it relies on the viewer to make those assumptions and come to those conclusions for themselves. And while I will say that this was one of my more least favorite unsatisfying endings, just because it left a lot to interpretation, it does still reign true that an unsatisfying ending will stick in your memory for a while, because here I am years later still talking about it, still thinking about it. And I've had conversations with friends pretty recently where they too are remembering movies with unsatisfying endings, and their top being Nope. And now I kind of want to bring this conversation out into talking about how this all plays into the concept of media literacy as a whole, because media literacy is something that is nothing new to this channel specifically. We talk about it all the time when it comes to media consumption and the way that we interact with movies, TV, and entertainment. And I've been saying this literally any chance I get, but media literacy across the board is at an all-time low. And it's only getting lower, I fear. If we think back to it, a lot of movies actually used to be very open-ended. In fact, a lot of media tended to be that way too, giving us undefined or sort of obscure endings that leave you thinking. Like, I remember distinctly growing up in high school, having to read and analyze books in other forms of media like TV shows and like documentaries or whatever that explicitly gave us unsatisfying or open-ended endings, and the exercise was for us to come to our own conclusion and hypothesize, make inferences, educated guesses, and critically think and analyze these forms of media to draw conclusions out of them. Like, the whole point of those critical thinking lessons was to make the viewer take time and analyze the media for themselves and come to those conclusions. And not to say that doesn't happen across the board now, but we've been seeing less and less of that sort of content really resonate with people, especially as we're now in an attention economy where attention time and retention is currency, and we live in this age of rapid consumption of media. The very nature of open-ended media requires a level of thought and time for the viewer to take after they watch a form of media, to think about, process, and draw conclusions from the content and information that they just got. And that's a stark contrast from the nature of how content is consumed nowadays. And I don't mean to sound like all woo-woo, like technology is here to end us, because I honestly don't believe that. Like, I'm a content creator myself, of course. I see value in the way that content is made and the way that it's consumed, but I also want to remain critical of it because it's very much the norm to consume content back to back to back through scrolling without really thinking about the content that you had just seen before. A lot of content is very self-contained, and the strategy that they give us as creators is to make it that way. You want to have a leading hook, be quick quick and to the point and then have a satisfying payoff or ending so that the viewer can get the full experience from your content, feel satisfied, and either choose to like for more or just scroll on. But regardless, the objective is to make the viewer or the consumer feel satisfied so they can continue on with their scroll, making sure that each thing has that concise beginning and end, which is a whole other thing of like why a lot of content is either forgettable or not really noticeable, because you're scrolling through so much, feeling all these different emotions from these different pieces of content, laughing at one video, getting mad at another, and feeling sad at the one after that, without really having the time or giving yourself time to really interrogate or think about what you just watched. Which is why it's the reason that a lot of people say that when it comes to short form, you can go a full day scrolling on your For You page and not really having a recollection of, one, the majority of what you watched outside of things that are exceptionally funny or exceptionally emotionally moving, and two, you couldn't really name or identify 5 of the creators of the videos you just watched because they were only in your world for 30 to 90 seconds and you just moved on afterwards. And this is all to say that it's not just the fact that we're now used to and more comfortable with having an ending that's pre-prescribed or given to us. A lot of times the information that is given just goes over people's heads, as it's not as common or really favored to take the time or energy to really deep information or to process or analyze the information for ourselves. So for example, and I don't mean to call you out, I'm sorry if I'm about to clock you, instead of taking the time to really come to your own conclusion about the ending of Challengers or the ending of a movie or show of that sort, you may run to an ending explained YouTube video or a TikTok breakdown to give you that ending for yourself so that you can feel that satisfying feeling of knowing the full story on someone else's terms, so that you can then feel like, okay, I now know the ending of Challengers and I can tell other people about it. Again, sorry if that was you and your purpose of coming to this video. I am fully guilty of that too and definitely ran to some ending explains myself to get a fuller scope of the ending and other perspectives so that I could know if I was thinking similar things or was completely off base. But it's just become uncomfortable and sort of uncommon to fully analyze and contextualize the media that we consume, and is one of the main contributing factors for why I feel like a lot of unsatisfying endings frustrate people so much and why people hate them as much as they do. But on the flip side, trying to bring an answer to this video's question, if that's the case, then why are these movies that give us these frustrating and complex endings always the ones that end up with the most critical acclaim? And I feel like the reasoning behind that is, one, film reviewers tend to be paid to actually critically think. Like it's their job to look deeper and come to those conclusions in context and have those thoughts. So of course, when it's actually a good, obscure, satisfying ending, they're gonna give it a higher rating. But for the general public, these sort of endings cause the most conversation. While not everyone is coming to those conclusions and putting in that critical thought, everyone's talking about it. Whether or not you're walking out of that theater, coming to your own conclusions and figuring out what the ending of the movie means to you, or if the person that walks out of the theater and hops online to see other people's breakdowns, ending explains, and get that conclusion, or whether you're just someone that hops online or talks to your group of friends about how much you disliked having that ending end that way or not end that way. It's causing conversation, it's starting a discourse, and at the end of the day, people like having that conversation. People enjoy the moment in the discourse of it all. Whether or not it's more work or more frustrating to break it down or not, it creates a conversation. It makes these movies go viral and cements them in the pop culture zeitgeist as a moment in time where everyone was talking about and trying to break down Challengers, Nope, insert whatever unsatisfyingly ending movie here. But yeah, that's all I got on this topic, y'all. I feel like I've yapped enough. Now I want to turn the mic over to you. Are you a person that appreciates an unsatisfying ending, or do you think they're overrated? Did you enjoy Challengers or understand the ending of Challengers? Do you like my oversized beanie? There's a lot to talk about down in the comments below, so definitely do that. But I want to thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Again, if you're new to the channel, then definitely subscribe, leave a like on this video, and follow me on my socials at Imurgency on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter. But other than that, y'all, I've been Imurgency, and I will see you in the next video. Peace.